for that. So let's give Brother Jim a big hand as he comes to speak the word to us. Thank you. Come on, Brother Jim.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to try to keep this message short so that you could have time to go through and ponder it and think it over, and also so maybe you can beat the crowds to the restaurants on this Mother's Day, whichever, you know. But I'm so thankful for my mother. I don't have a Mother's Day message, but I'm thankful for my mother. You know, a lot of us wouldn't be here if we didn't have a mother, would we? So I'm thankful, and a lot of us wouldn't be in here if we didn't have a good mother. And I'm so thankful for my mother. You know, early in your life, most of your character is developed by your mother. And it sure was mine. My mother had she knew how to treat me. In fact, when I was 3 years old, I decided I'm never going to wear short pants again. I never have. I don't wear Bermuda shorts or nothing, because when I was 3, she had a switch. And I decided, hey, it's so a lot better to have long pants on when she's after me with that switch. Not that I needed it, but, you know, I guess she thought I did, you know. So I was thankful for it. And I had a good mother. I had a good dad. I remember another time my mother, I was listening on the radio, and I was about 3 or 4, and I said, gosh. Man, my mother got after me. She said, don't you ever say that again? Tell you how kids are, even at that age. I went into the bathroom. I closed the door. I locked it. I went over in the corner. And I said, gosh, golly. You know, and I still remember that's a 4-year-old kid, you know. Well, but I'm thankful for my mother. She was very good. And she punished me for things I didn't deserve. And she missed a lot of things I did, you know. But I had a good mother and a good father. And now I've had people talk to me, said, I had an awful father. I had a terrible father. I don't know if I've heard very many people said I had an awful mother. Now, I'm sure somebody has had awful mothers, but I remember I talked to her about their mother about that, but I've heard them talk about their dad. I did have a good dad, though. And God made mothers awfully special. Even, we watch a channel on YouTube, and it just plays music. I don't know if you've ever gone on YouTube. They have a lot of channels that's gospel music, and they'll play for 3 or 4 hours, you know. Well, this one channel we were watching the other day, it was had pictures. It was just playing instrumental music, but in the background they had pictures of little animals, little cats and kittens. I mean, kittens and puppies and even baby lions and everything. And a lot of times they would have the mother there taking care of that, you know, loving. I remember one of them was the lion. Now, I don't know who took the picture of that. I don't know how he didn't get eaten up. But that lion would have eaten up anybody else, but she started licking her cub, taking care of it. That's a mother. That's a God-made mothers that way, and so I'm thankful for them. And my mother, she told me lots of stories. She told me lots of fairy tales, and I like that. You know, even adults enjoy fairy tales. The past president of the French Academy of Science, he said, evolution is an adult fairy tale. Now, I told Brother Bob, I got to be careful about not going over and chasing some rabbit trails down, but I could talk about that for a long time. But anyway, he said that's I think most people enjoyed fairy tales when they were little. And I remember a couple of months ago, I talked about, on our Wednesday night service, I talked about the 3 little pigs and how that paralleled 1 Corinthians 3. About, 1 Corinthians 3 says you're supposed to build on a solid foundation. Remember the 3 little pigs? They went out and they built them a house out of straw, and another one built it out of wood, another one out of bricks. And so we talked about that. But in 1 Corinthians 3, it talks about your works are going to be judged by what your works are. Are they just wood, hay, and stubble, like those two of the little pigs made their house out of? Is it just wood, hay, and stubble? Is it going to be just burn up and gone, or is it gold, silver, and precious stone? What are our works? I know a lot of my works are just wood, hay, and stubble. I hope there's some gold, silver, and precious stone works that I'll see when we get our awards. Now, it also went to great lengths to tell you, hey, even though your works may be burned up, you're not going to be if you've built your house on solid rock, which is Jesus Christ. He's telling you, hey, you're not going to heaven by your works. You're not saved by your works. So he's telling us that. So by the way, on Wednesday night, I'd encourage all of you to come on. It tells you on the back of your bulletin. I don't have my bulletin here. It tells you on the back of the bulletin. It's good. We go on there, and if you have a computer that has a camera in it and everything, we see it on this GoToMeeting, and we fellowship with one another, and we have a good time, and we have a short message, and we have prayer requests and praises, and get updated on things. It's a really good time together. So I'd like to encourage you to do that, and just tune in. And it only lasts about 45 minutes, and so if you get there early, you get a little bit of fellowship, a little prayer requests, and that. Now, I'm thankful for the young people we have here. Man, that's a good group there. And I'd like to talk to you. I know some of the old people they're not going to listen, but I'd like for you to listen to me, and some things I'd like to say to you. And but now, I don't want you thinking I'm going to tell you about the three little pigs. Don't worry about that. I'm going to talk about Little Red Riding Hood. If you don't remember the story, she's a cute sweet little girl. And her mother sends her to go look after her grandmother who was sick and in bed, and probably take her some soup or something. So she's headed that way. And her mother tells you, be sure, don't go take the shortcut through the woods. Go around and go to Grandma's house and take care of her. And so she goes over there, and if you remember the story, the wolf had watched her, and he ran ahead of her, and he got in there, and he took Grandma in one version of the story and tied her up and gagged her and put her in the closet and got in her nightgown and got in her bed with her. And remember, Little Red Riding Hood comes in, sees him, and said, "What big eyes you have." You remember the story. Well, I got to thinking, I'm not sure that she is all that naive. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's this wolf in this story, and the wolves in the fairy tales always represented something bad. Now, in the Bible, they had lions, and they talked about roaring lions. They were the bad things. Remember 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about, seeking who may what? Devour. Man, he wants to devour you. He goes about like a roaring lion. Well, if Peter had written this and lived in Europe, he would have probably not seen lions. He would have probably said he roams about like a big bad wolf, because bad wolves, they represent everything. So there weren't lions in Europe, but the wolf represents murderers. The wolf represents being deceitful, liars, bully, and they don't eat right. They eat little kids, and they eat little goats, and eat grandmas, and eat little girls. And I think in this story, if you read between the lines, you'll see that he also was into drugs, because he was not after Grandma. He was after the heroine of our story. So I got another page here. Okay. But Little Red, like I said earlier, but Little Red Riding Hood may not have been as innocent and as naive as you might have thought when you heard the story, because I think she's I think she'd probably been flirting with this wolf character a few times. Mama, why was she wearing this cute little Red Riding outfit over to see her grandma? You know, you girls, you probably wore your jeans and your pull-over shirts. You wouldn't wear some of the cutest little thing you had. She was meeting up with this wolf, I think. And I realize I'm running the story for you, but and then she tells him where she's going to be. So he runs ahead, and he gets ahead, and he grabs Grandma and ties her up and dags her and gets rid of her. And then Little Red Riding Hood finally gets there at that grandma's house, and she's wearing this cute little Red Riding outfit, and she gets to Grandma and she says, you tell me she didn't recognize it? That wasn't Grandma in that gown. It's crazy. I mean, she didn't have that ugly a grandma. And so she gets there, and she says, now here's the clue. Oh, Grandma, what big eyes you have. You know? And what has he said? The better to see you with, what's he say? My dear, right? There's something been going on. She's been flirting with this wolf. And finally she says, what big ears you have, the better to hear you with, my dear. Oh, Grandma, what big teeth you have, the better to eat you with, my dear. And he jumps out of the bed, and she runs off. Fortunately, there was a good woodsman close by, heard her screaming, and saved her from the wolf. And this is the kind of thing that we think, well, maybe she wasn't all that naive and innocent. So I've ruined the story, I know. Okay, but flirting, she was been flirting with this wolf. Now, flirting's not necessarily bad. Depends on who you're flirting with, what you're flirting with, and you know, if you're at the marrying age, if you don't do a little bit of flirting, you probably never get married, right? So, but be careful who you flirt with, and girls, you shouldn't flirt with the guys you wouldn't want to marry. Ones that don't have the character that you'd need to marry, because that can lead to some real problems. And first of all, what kind of guys should you flirt with? First of all, he should be a committed Christian. You shouldn't be flirting with somebody who's not. I was used to teach a college career class years ago, and I came in the class, and some of the girls were talking, and this one girl was talking about a date she had the night before. And I walked up, and they were telling me about it. And I said, well, tell me about this guy, you know. And she said, well, he has blue eyes and blonde hair and a red Camaro, drives a red Camaro. Okay. I was hoping she'd say, man, he loves the Lord. Man, he prayed with us before we started out on our date, which is a good idea. We always prayed when we dated. And particularly at the end, because hey, if you know you're going to pray at the end, you want to be a little bit, realize it's, hey, I'm not ashamed to pray here, you know. So I was disappointed that that's all what she's thinking: blue eyes and blonde hair and red Camaro, you know. And so she should be more concerned about his character than his looks. I told my wife the other day, I said, honey, if I die and you get married again, this time I want you to marry somebody for their money and not for their looks. She said, well, I thought that's what I was doing the first time. So a couple of girls in my class didn't take my advice there. So many Christians flirt with things they shouldn't, not just people, but things they shouldn't. I've seen many fall because they flirted with the wrong thing. My dad, I don't know if anybody here even knew my dad, but Ms. Peavy did. She's with her kids today. But My dad, when he was in his younger days, he flirted with gambling. Now, back then, they had these little things at the restaurant, the cafe. They were little tablets, and they had about 100 little holes in them, and you could punch them out with a pencil, and you get this piece of paper, and you paid to do this. It's probably a nickel then, it'd probably be $1 now, but you push it out, and it would tell you how much you won. And he got caught up. He was flirting with gambling. Just a little thing like this. Now, those are illegal now. And she said if it had been illegal then, he would never have touched it. But it was legal in Texas then for these things. And he got that, and he got hooked on gambling. And he didn't plan on being a big-time gambler, but he got to the point where he was a big-time gambler. He told me in his last days, he told me, man, I got to owing so much money, I went and borrowed $3,000 on my house. And I thought, hey, how am I going to afford that? He took that $3,000 and he's going to match it so he could pay the loan shark back. Lost it too. How crazy. He still has to. Now, he got over that gambling years later, but before he did, some of the gamblers said, hey, if you don't pay us, something's liable to happen to your wife and kids. That's the kind of gamblers he was with. And he ended up giving hot checks to raise enough money to pay them off. And finally got that resolved. Well, he finally got things right with the Lord, got things straightened out, and he never gambled again. He wouldn't flip anybody a coin to see who bought the Cokes. He wouldn't gamble at all. But a lot of people never get out of that. I'm just saying, don't flirt with things that you shouldn't, because you don't know what it will happen to you. So he flirted with the gambling. And by the way, there is advertisements on TV about how all these states around Texas, they have these places, these gambling places, like up at Oklahoma and Louisiana and everything, and they're trying to say, hey, you ought to do that in Texas. Texas is missing out on this money. Let me tell you, Texas doesn't need that money, because it will surely ruin a lot of families, a lot of people's lives, a lot more than it's going to help. I've been to Las Vegas several times, had meetings there several times. Man, they got the fanciest buildings. They got more lights than you can imagine. You can imagine how many lights and everything, and how pretty and everything that is. Where do you think that money comes from? All right, they don't have much industry in Nevada. Most of it comes from there. And man, you just stay away from it. Just don't start, because you don't know when you're going to get caught up in it. You flirt with other things. Flirting with smoking. I remember smoking when I was a kid. Nobody was overly concerned about it. They didn't know how bad it was on your lungs, how bad it was. So it was kind of a thing that teenagers did that so they could, look a little more like they're grown. You kind of tend to want to do that. Now, that's the way I thought about it. Maybe you don't think about it that way, but I thought about, it make me look more like an adult, with this. Because when you're getting to be an older teenager, you want to be grown somewhere. And so I tried a couple of cigarettes when I was little. When I was a teenager. And I thought, how stupid. And I never smoked anymore. But a lot of people have. Now then, let me tell you about a good friend of mine. Anytime he goes anywhere in his house, he has to pull a little hose with oxygen in it. And if he goes out of the house, he has to carry a tank of oxygen. You know why? Because when he was a teenager, he started smoking, and he smoked all his life, and now he has about 10% lung capacity. Now, why would people do that? Why would they do it? Because like I say, I don't know many adults that start smoking. You usually start smoking when you're a teenager because you feel like, hey, I'm gonna be grown up if I do that. Don't mess around with it, and don't flirt with social drinking or drinking at all. So nobody ever sets out to be a drunk. I never heard anybody say, "Oh man, what are you going to be when I grow up?" "Oh man, I want to be a drunk, that lays there in the gutter." Nobody thinks that. But that's what happens when you flirt with it. I remember how people used to try to encourage me to get drinking and everything. Hey, don't do it. Don't flirt with it. Don't flirt with drugs. Nobody wants to be a drug addict. I just want to feel good, and they get to where they can't handle it. And so I got another page here. I got to get you. Okay. So why do people flirt with these kind of things? Because of peer pressure, mainly. You wouldn't want to think about smoking a cigarette if it wasn't a peer pressure. You remember, and a lot of you remember Bob Newhart. Well, in his early days, he had some little skits that he went with, and he said this guy was from England, and he sent Sir Walter Raleigh over here to America to kind of explore how they could invest in various things. And he said, okay, he's on the phone talking. They didn't have phones in, but he's on the phone talking to Sir Walter Raleigh. He says, what have you found? Well, we found this kind of a weed, and if you cut it up, and then you take it and you put it in a piece of paper and you roll it up, and then what do you do with it then? Oh, you stick it in your mouth. You stick it in your mouth, yeah. Then what do? You set fire to it? That's crazy, And so he said, what else can you do with it? Well, you can grind it up real fine. Oh, don't tell me what you do with it. Stick it in your ear. No. So people start smoking and grow drugs and drinking and everything because of peer pressure, not because they're that great. So be careful who you run around with. When I talk about peer pressure, I found out in my own life when I was a teenager, I'd rather be a fool than appear to be a fool. I remember we had some guys, and I was riding with them and said, hey, let's go get beer, which was against the law at that age. Let's go get beer. Well, I didn't want to do that, but they said, Cook, you want to go? Well, yeah, I didn't want to appear to be a fool, but I'd be a fool. I finally got out of it somehow, but that peer pressure is tough. And you need to be careful who you run around with. And your mother and dad, listen to them when they say, you don't go that way. Jamie, you and Charlotte, I can't believe y'all let your daughter run around who she ran around with, some of you don't know that she's married to one of our deacons here. So I'm just kidding here. But hey, it's important who your kids run around with, because they're very influenced by the others, and so you got to be careful, and you got to be careful what enters your mind. You got to be very careful with that. Matthew 15:18 says, "But these things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, that they defile a man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murderers, adulterers, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things that defile a man." You don't want to be defiled, so it's very important. Your thought life is extremely important. Adults, your thought life is very important. And in Philippians 4:8 is along that line. "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." It's important what we think, because the Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That's what we are, what we think about. So our attitude depends on the input that we do in our mind. What do you talk to your friends about? I read this one time, said, great minds discuss ideas, good ideas. Medium minds discuss events. Small minds just talk about other people. And I thought that, what time when we get together, do we talk about great ideas? Do we talk about important things? We just talk about other people. And then hang around with the positive Christians. If we don't do that, we hang around with people with filthy language. Now, I've told people, when I was in the Marines, back when I just first got out of high school, I joined the Marines. And let me tell you, I heard every bad word there ever was. And why? We were around a lot of sailors. But we had a lot of, there's some sailors around here. But avoid that filthy language. It's hard to, if you ever started, it's hard to stop. And so avoid your filthy language. Be careful what movies you watch. Be careful what TV. I know. I used to go to church and they said, oh, you don't go to movies. But then they finally came along, well, okay, let's go to movies. Well, I saw people go from, hey, I won't go to any movies. I won't watch TV, to go into the other ditch and then watch anything. Just because it's a movie doesn't make it bad, but you got to make your choice of what movie you're going to watch and what you're going to see. Let me tell you, there's a whole lot of filth on TV. You may not believe that, but there's a whole bunch of filth on TV. There's a lot of filthy movies. You don't need to be watching those. And because they will affect your mind, and they will, but there's a lot of good movies too. Pick those. So I had a friend, preacher friend, who said he got to talking to me. He got to playing around with pornography and stuff, and pornographic movies. He said, I didn't intend to. I just saw this thing here and that thing there, and I just kept getting deeper and deeper into it. It just caught my mind. We don't want our mind like that. He didn't want a mind like it, but that's what it did. He got his mind caught up into this to this pornography. Now, when I was in school, it was pretty hard to get books, magazines like that. You couldn't buy a Playboy or anything like that. If you went to 7-Eleven, they sold them, but they had a brown wrapper on them. And if you weren't 21 or so, you couldn't buy one. Now, on the internet, you've got to fight to make sure it doesn't go there, because you got to stay away from that stuff. And if you go there, it just keeps you pulling you and pulling you and pulling you. I tell you what, the devil is pretty strong. He will lure you into things and just keep you deeper and deeper and deeper. That's what I've been talking about this whole time. He'll keep digging you in deeper and deeper. And this kind of garbage, it's hard to get rid of, but now with the computer, you can find it, with this pornography stuff. So, as I started to say, hang around with positive Christians. Notice I said positive Christians. Now, some Christians they got to complain about everything. Hang around. I remember I used to work with Accelerated Christian Education, and one day we had a snowstorm, and it's up in Louisville, and we lived here in Garland. And, I didn't want to drive up there, and they actually closed it down because there was ice. No, I said snowstorm. It's an ice storm. And I was get there, and we were all ready to have a family time, and we fixed some hot chocolate, and my boss called me. He said, Brother Cook, I need you. We're going to fly to Chicago. We're having a meeting in Chicago, and they're having some technical problems, and I need you to go up there with me and some others, and let's resolve these problems. And I thought, man, I don't want to go out there and I'd drive over to Addison and where the airplane was, and I wanted to avoid all this stuff, but I kind of had a bad attitude about it. I hope I didn't show that attitude, but in my own mind, I had kind of a bad attitude because I was already made up my mind we're going to have a good time at home. So I got in the plane, got up there, still had a bad attitude. Got there to the meeting, and they were all this preaching and everything going on, and I still had a bad attitude. And I ran into this lady. She was at the Chicago. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't hardly move anything but her hands. She controlled her wheelchair with her hands. And she said, "Isn't this great?" I thought, man, how does she have such a good attitude and I got a bad attitude? I changed my attitude by hanging around with that positive Christian. And that's the way it is. I know another one. We have a missionary, Victor Hartsfield and his wife. They are, we need to pray for them. They're trying to get back to Cambodia, I think it is, and having some problems getting back. But Victor's grandmother, Miss Hartsfield, she used to be at our church. And one time we had a sermon, and afterward I walked out to the back of the church, and after the message and everything, and a couple of deacons were back there talking. Said, "I don't think the preacher spent 5 minutes preparing that sermon." And I said, "Well, what do you think?" "Oh, it probably wasn't his best, you know. And the other one was, they were saying it was awful, So I'm kind of down, kind of depressed, kind of walking out and going to pick up our kids and everything. And here's Miss Hartsfield. "Wasn't that the best sermon you ever heard?" I said, "Well, it was pretty good." I had a totally different attitude. You know why? I'm hanging around now with a positive Christian and not these people that are complaining all the time. And I just remember Miss Hartsfield doing that for me, and it gave me quite a lesson there. So work on, you and me need to work on passing a positive attitude to other people. We need to be positive about things that are good and about our church and about everything. And in 1 John 2:15 says, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. And if any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." We need to remember that, and we need to keep our minds pure and loving and on things above and not on things below. So let me ask you, who's afraid of the big bad wolf? You and me better be. We better flee that big bad wolf, that devil, because he's a whole lot more powerful than we are. But let me tell you the good thing. He's not nearly as powerful as God. He is there. So submit yourself, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. That's what James tells us in James 4. Submit yourself to God and resist the devil, and he'll flee from you. And I hope you will realize, have you been fearing the devil, or have you been flirting? Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for all you've done for us, for the blessings you've given us. Lord, we thank you for the mothers that are here, for the things they taught us, and Lord, how they, in our early times of life, they built our character, they developed our convictions. And Lord, we just pray that, Lord, your name will be honored in the things we do, and you'll help us to love you and to fear the devil, but to resist him and know that you're much more powerful than he is. And we'll ask you to give you the praise for it all, for we ask these things in your name. Amen.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Jim.